Hi there, my name is Rachel Shelmerdine, and I would like to welcome you to my podcast, Moments in Motion, where I speak with creative leaders from across all areas of the international design industry. And today I'm absolutely delighted to welcome my guest, Orlagh O'Reilly. Orlagh is a creative director, a founder. She has a 20-year career spanning pretty much all areas of brand design, from luxury to lifestyle, from fashion to beauty, from consumer to retail. And what really sets Orlagh apart is her innate understanding of brand. And what I mean by that is that she really understands what people find engaging and meaningful and what inspires them or moves them. And she blends that expertise together with a unique storytelling approach and with really strong strategic and creative thinking. And the effect is magical. And anyone who's ever worked with Orlagh or has been a client will testify to that. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you, Orlagh. Hello, how are you?
Oh, hello, Rachel. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm
You're welcome.
great.
And where are you? Where are you? Where are you at the moment?
I am in beautiful South County Dublin, so the sun is shining, and I'm right by the sea, so it's really lovely here. Yes.
Yeah, I know that spot well. But you're so lucky you've got sun because I'm in Dorset in southwest England, and it's just grey and rainy, very, very, very windy and dark.
Well, yes, we are lucky because glimmers of sunshine are very precious in Ireland as well.
Yes, I know. I lived there for many years, and so the moment it would be sunny, you'd go out and do something. But when it is magical, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, we're very blessed.
And I didn't say in my introduction, Orla, that you are the global director for brand design for PepsiCo. So I would presume then that you are traveling a lot, that you are not always based in Ireland anymore.
That's right. So my current role, I lead Pepsi Global Design
Right.
at PepsiCo. A
Yeah.
wonderful role for business, and it based out of Dublin, which is fantastic. And
Yeah,
yes,
amazing.
best of both worlds, because after being in London for such a long spell, and the chunk of my
Yes.
career from when I graduated from St. Martin's, it's wonderful to be able to continue my career here, based in Dublin with my family,
Yeah.
but have that a fantastic opportunity to travel and travel all sorts of places that it takes me. It's a real cherry on top for sure.
And so where do you cover? You cover the globe pretty much everywhere except the States.
We describe it as international beverages, and it's our markets outside of the US and Canada. So we look after all of the markets in the rest of the world, which is wonderful. We get to
Yeah.
experience, to your point, like the consumer need and what makes their engages their minds and hearts. It's really wonderful to think about LATAM to China and everywhere else in between. It's really exciting. Like, I love that piece of consumer design. I love thinking about what people fall in love with and how to make them fall in love. It's a joy.
Well, that's always been your expertise because I've known you now. I first met you, and it must be nearly 20 years ago.
Yeah, Rachel, it's a
A
long
long
time.
time ago, and we met in London. Of course, you've been recommended to me, and I know that is your expertise, getting under the skin of what consumers really latch onto and find exciting and just love when you walk into a space and you first encounter the brand. And so to work for such a big company and with I assume a very big budget, does it mean that you sort of have no creative limits almost?
No, not quite the opposite. We
Oh,
always have
really?
challenges, always. And I think, it's always challenges that shape the best creative outcomes, right?
Yes.
That's when you're really pushed to think and solve and engage as a creative thinker. And I think that's where our education as designers really makes us stand out, makes us essential to businesses. Now, you see all sorts
Mm,
of businesses hiring for creative roles that you wouldn't have previously. And I think it's that ability to think outside the box, the way we sit down as graphic designers or product designers, and really, what is the problem we're trying to solve for? Where are the opportunities? Where are the challenges? Who's going to use it in the end? How do we want to make
yeah.
them feel? And how we solve for that is a very unique way of thinking.
That kind of pressure really gets you to think in a way that is really exciting. That's when the magic happens, isn't it?
Yes, always. It is. "The pressure make diamonds," that old analogy. But I think, that's why you can have such a fabulous, long, interesting, engaging career. Every single day is different because every single day brings those new challenges to solve. It's what keeps us going, I think, as designers. You can just
Definitely.
you
Definitely.
learning, you keep learning how to figure and solve in different ways.
Yes, definitely. Right. Well, before we go into your moments in motion, Orla, I want to ask you a couple of questions. So I was thinking, what will I ask you? So I thought really because you always, I mean, you've struck me from the first time I met you and every time that we've spoken ever since, you always strike me. You have this timeless elegance. You're very elegant. You have just a natural finesse. I remember the first time I met you and I felt like I'd been dragged through a bush backwards in comparison. If you could be in any era to design in, which era would you choose?
But I'm going to give you two very gut reactions to that. How awesome would it have been to been in Madison Avenue when it was at its high?
Oh, yeah.
But be a woman in those roles, really be leading the pack. I think that was very glamorous and exciting.
Yeah, Ogilvy period.
Very glamorous, and where creativity was obviously marrying with the age of advertising and consumer goods, like the birth of our roles, what we do every day. And I think
Yes,
that just felt like the wild west of our careers. We were so celebrated like little mini gods in that world. I think that was very
yes,
exciting. But then the other side, I love the simplicity of when you were talking, my mind immediately went to, Eames's house and that kind of era of that beautiful
yes,
design and spaces. I love nature, and I think, for me, that kind of moment, and to be and to live in and an experience at that time must have been very really exciting. So two very different.
very
Um
different. Yeah, opposite ends of the spectrum.
I think that's quite reflective of me as a person. I love kind of the glamorous side and the fun, but then I love nothing more than a wild walk and just being in nature. I think as creative people, oh my goodness, I think it's so important. I didn't realize it at the time, when you're in your 20s and you're buzzing around London and it's wonderful and you're so inspired on the tube and even the
Yeah,
smell and everything. It's so life affirming. And my tube rides or the bus ride all the way into Holborn, I would feel so inspired. People you'd see, things you'd
yeah.
see, but equally I used to crave nature.
In your early 20s, you still
Yeah,
felt that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I needed that reset. I needed that reframe. I needed that blue sky. It does help my brain reset, rewire.
When you talk about that smell of London and how exciting it was just to be on a tube or on a bus, because like you, I moved to London in my 20s, but I kind of almost forgot about nature for a long period until I moved to Dublin when I was 29. And what's so lovely about Dublin is it is that mix of city life, but you're always surrounded by the Dublin mountains and you're always near the sea. And I joined a riding school up in the Dublin mountains and I started riding. And I remember going to the Wicklow Mountains for the first time, and I hadn't realized that I actually had a love of nature. It was Dublin that brought that out of me.
I grew up in the countryside, so I'm not sure if it was that natural, place of, where I
Yeah.
grew up and I need it. But I do feel like it did help me think.
Yes.
It gave me a wash of in my brain if I was trying to solve some big problem, a creative
Mm.
problem, a work for college. It really helped me re-see a problem.
So where are you from? Where were you born, Orla?
The beautiful countryside of County Meath, hence my maybe my pang for green fields and blue skies.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And what inspired you to become a creative? Was it always there?
I think it was always there, and it was kind of in very gently encouraged. My parents were very
Yeah.
encouraging to just do our best and enjoy what we do, and very much wanted us to go to college. That was a really big thing in our house, but
Yes.
with no particular pressure, which I think allowed me the freedom to explore. And both were really encouraging in terms of the path to take. So, I just had this natural, honestly, natural internal pull. No, I didn't know specifically which kind of the way into that world because I didn't know
Mm.
a graphic designer or a brand. We didn't even have those words. It was very much
No,
you did
brand
art.
is still new, isn't it? I mean, it was what?
Only
It is really only been about the last 25, 30 years, isn't it?
it is a
No.
very new world. Graphic design, we have, like lots of people back in the 90s who really carved that path for us. It
Mm.
was art or you did fashion. They were the kind of big ones. And I
Yes.
knew I didn't want to do fashion, but I loved the world around fashion. And I was obsessed when the Face magazine landed. I was like, "Oh my God," just said everything in between those covers. And I still didn't really know what that world was, but I knew it was that general direction. And
Mm.
so that's where I then began to explore and then naturally then discovered the different courses that were available and what they meant and the different worlds. And,
Mm.
community design felt for me like, wow, this is because there were so many paths once you went through that
Yes.
course. Yeah, I just loved it. I just fell into my world then immediately. It was wonderful.
And was it a natural step then for you to think that you wanted to go to London? Did London seem then that was the hub of design, that
Um,
was the place to go?
so Dublin was amazing, can I just say, in the 90s. Like it was
Yeah,
just a super decade, great music,
yeah,
like an amazing underground dance scene, which, was just incredibly exciting. Um,
yes.
and and it was really there was this kind of sense of confidence around that as well.
I'd been visiting sort of from the mid-90s, and though each time I went, it felt more confident, definitely.
Yeah, I think there was definitely a confidence. The economy picked up. There was less emigration,
Yeah,
but I was always pulled towards something over there. My parents
yeah,
again traveled. They were in the US, they were in Canada, they were in London. They were always very encouraging to, go explore the world. And New York, I'd been through college. I went every summer and I did
yeah.
different things. And I had a great experience, and I felt like New York was where I wanted to go. It was on my course in IADT. The wonderful lecturer who was, really amazingly encouraging and it's those
Mm,
people that see something inside of you that you don't see at the time because
mm,
you're too close to yourself. That said, have you ever thought about applying for this MA in Central St. Martin's? And of course I knew what Central St. Martin's was, but I only associated
yeah,
with fashion because at the time it was Stella and Pulp and all that kind of amazing
yeah.
energy. And I was like, no, but okay. And I remember I filled out the form and sent it off, and you had to, obviously create your kind of pitch. Anyway, jigs and the reels. One, got a place, and that was it. Headed off and spent almost, I don't know, 18 years in London from there. And
Wow,
it's just
gosh.
wonderful. Like that was such a big door opener because from there,
Yes.
our show was Andy Altman, the wonderful Andy Altman, who sadly passed away at the end of last year, was an incredible mentor in my life. He was the one that kind of gave me that first opportunity to join Why Not Studios, who I adored. My student notebooks were full of photocopied of their work. So it was just like it was intangible to kind of believe, wow, I was sitting in the studio and working there.
Yeah, must have been amazing.
Oh, it was incredible because they did everything, like from physical, sculptural to books to digital to everything. So it was a really wonderful place for me to land because it,
Mm,
it was it was just such an amazing experience and to have, and again surrounded by really talented designers.
yes. Yeah, real learning as well to be surrounded by that talent. There are just some agencies that just have that breadth of knowledge and do so much. And so many people go and learn so much and then go out into the world and take that with them. So
Yes, and I've
very
stayed
exciting.
close with some of those people all through the years. We're
Yes.
alumnus of that agency. But yeah, real kind of
Yeah.
shaping experience because just from there embarked on an incredible kind of creative journey across London, different
Yes.
agencies that had allowed me to travel the globe, working with agencies and people
Yeah.
and brands that I admired, and never would have imagined my little kind of, 15, 16-year-old self who was ripping out, pages of magazines and sticking them on walls would be then that person creating that stuff. It's amazing where you're when you follow, I think, that little voice inside and kind of
Yes.
figure it out and believe in that little voice. I think it brings you on an incredible journey then with the support of incredible people who
Yes, most definitely. It's those
help you
people.
along.
Well, then that sort of triggers me to ask then. So let's dive into your moments, because I'm sure then you will talk about some of these people and mentors, because nearly everyone that I've spoken to so far, or that's a big part of their creative journey. That if it's chance meetings with certain people, then that inspire them or encourage them to go in a path they didn't really expect. So let's dive in. Let's talk about your first moment that you thought of.
First moment. Well, I did. I gave this a lot of thought, and I think it is a chain reaction, and I think it
Yeah.
was probably my dad who was so encouraging, but also
Mm.
tuned in to those little things that I was maybe looking at or saying or seeing, and he was able to push me in the right direction that would allow me to grow into that future version of myself and that potential and that sense of possibility. And I think he was great. Like, he saw no boundaries. There was no limits that I could not achieve. And just that
Mm.
unwavering belief that then became the moment that, kind of sets you up with that powerful foundation
Yes.
confidence and growth that you can have. And I think confidence is something I think is really interesting for creatives. I
Mm.
mentor and always have, because I think it's just a wonderful thing to do because I had such a good experience on my journey. And I see it consistently with students, just that with design students in particular, like the lack of confidence they have in their
Yep.
ability is baffling.
There is that initially that inability to see the talent and the magic. I mean, that's why I specialize in this industry. And I first came in, that was always what I wanted to do, was to work on confidence first of all. I agree with you. I meet people who are so talented. They are just amazing and they don't see it. And I almost feel it's my mission, and I bet you feel this as a mentor. It's my mission then to make sure that by the time they finish work with me, they know it, to be able to shine a light on that person
Oh,
and reflect back what other people see. That's
yeah.
probably the most satisfying thing, isn't it?
It's just incredibly rewarding to see
Yes.
a little seed inside someone. And but I think with designers, there's just a lack of
Yeah.
ego and they have such
Yes.
humility and it's such a personal journey. But I think that piece around creative courage and confidence and the journey that we all as creatives go on to get
Yeah.
there and experiences in our different ways. But that belief that you have in your ability to kind of generate ideas and bring them to life, it's
Mm.
not just about being artistic or imaginative. It's trusting your capability to solve problems and think outside the box
Mm.
and leverage all the tools we're given as designers. And I think particularly now in this crazy new world we're in, to take risks that are
Mm.
powerful and meaningful. And that's the really important piece right now, to just really build that muscle that allows you to create that bedrock of creative confidence in your ability to problem solve,
Mm.
deliver something that solves a creative problem, but can cultivate and build that mindset time after time. Resilience, because we need to be
Mm.
strong as designers. There's a lot of knockbacks, but of possibility, that anything's possible. And I think that's where it gets really
Yeah.
exciting. And when you see that in someone and they grow in that confidence and it's wonderful, that flow state they get to. And I think that's a
Yeah.
long journey. I'm still on it. Even sitting here with you today, I wouldn't have done 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a constant journey and an investment in it. And how I think my one big advice to people is to invest in that side, because I think we go through a
Yeah.
lot of our courses in design thinking and we might miss out on in that investment in yourself. which I think
Yes.
then when you land in the real world be really intimidating.
Yeah, and the industry didn't used to invest a huge amount in it, and compared with other industries, still doesn't. Say compared, I came from technology, the technology sector, and they invest a lot in it. And you're so right, Orla, because it's key. It's that resilience. It's the courage to take a risk, but it's also the courage to believe in your idea, even when you get a knockback. Because I think when designers become too easily changed and diminished by a client's opinion, when they really believe in their idea, you've got to have the courage to stick with that idea, because there is a reason why a designer feels that's the right one. And it's having the courage to stick with that and to be able to then persuade the client. So it's a mix of teaching designers to have that self-belief, but also then to be able to articulate it, because quite often the client just doesn't understand. So they might dismiss an idea out of hand because they haven't really understood what it is. So it's that ability to articulate it, isn't it? So that then the client can go, okay, now I understand why you're saying this is so important to our business.
It's really, really important. The articulation of our ideas is really, really important, that we learn the
Mm.
language to get up and speak to your ideas. And I think that is a huge piece that could be plugged into the design courses. I think there is definitely a need to be able to very confidently stand up, present, articulate ideas, the language around it, the commercial side, why it makes, especially for communication design, it's critical that there's the business need that it's addressing, and being able to communicate that, because
Yes.
that's the key.
And then that goes with what you were saying at the beginning when you were talking about that magical period of the 50s on Madison Avenue. And when you think of these kind of gods like Ogilvy, it was that confidence and courage. And clients actually then love that. He had crazy ideas, but they didn't question it because he had so much self-belief. And
Yes.
he was willing to put himself out there and, like you say, to do things that are completely left of center. It's teaching designers very early on to start building that very strong self-belief that you can really put yourself right out on a limb for an idea which doesn't necessarily make sense initially.
Yes, I think, and certainly it's something I encourage my team, is it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
It's okay to fall, because the falling piece is really important. It's not just about the mistake, it's how we respond to them as
Yes.
leaders, as creative leaders, because in every fall there's a lesson. And that's where you learn resilience. But the creativity piece, the opportunity that you learn in that, of how you discover new ways forward and continue to figure things out. And there's all those different ways and perspectives are different. Keep going. You've got to keep
Mm,
going. And that's what builds creative confidence and creative resilience. And I think when you do that, I don't like to use the word failing, but when you fall in a team dynamic
mm,
where mistakes are
mm.
embraced, and it embraced as part of the creative journey, that's where the real magic happens, as you said, because when you
Mm.
fall and someone's there with an outstretched hand to help you, that's a really powerful moment in a team dynamic, and it shows kindness. It
Yes.
means you're seen and you're being encouraged in that moment. And that's where you can see that someone believes in you, that you're on the right path. It's okay to
Mm,
have the little fall, but that's where we learn and we rise, and it strengthens not just our ability to create, but that real foundational belief in ourselves, because that's
mm.
where the creative confidence equals amplified creative good growth. And
Yeah.
that's where it's nurtured, and those vulnerable moments, and being vulnerable as a leader as well. And I think, we have to push to experiment and explore, and push the creative edges and the boundaries, because that's what our industry is built on and will continue to be, not be replaced by robots.
Yes, definitely. But you're so right when you say about vulnerability, showing vulnerability as a creative leader, because I would say all the best creative leaders that I've worked with are able to show that vulnerability and also are able to not necessarily be the person who is going to come up with a solution to a problem, that they are very comfortable that they are not the main solution, provider, that they are able to allow other people to step into that space. And
Yeah.
then again, the magic can happen, can't it? Because if a team feels safe, it can be someone who might be very junior, but just has that winning idea. They just can see something or can sense something.
Absolutely. It's really hard to fall as a human being.
Yes.
We all feel that pain, but I think it's creating the right environment, because I think it's creative courage and confidence is shaped by those two things: experience,
Mm,
environment. And as leaders, if we can help shape both, we have the privilege actually to help shape those, then
yeah.
feeling isn't seen as a risk. Or that as a leader that, it's too big to risk. It leaves, why wouldn't your team then be very reluctant to embrace risk as part of their creative journey? So it's really really important.
And like you say, that is the magic that can't be replicated by the robots.
Absolutely. I mean, that creative spark that happens in a team, and the magic
Yeah.
that happens when you solve a problem, it's like it's wonderful.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about another moment.
I've always pretty much been on this kind of natural comms world, and
Yes.
pretty much in mostly most part of my career has been in FMCG, and then I
Yes.
did lots of fashion and luxury beauty and luxury fashion.
Mm,
I love, which was again that kind of moment of when I was younger and not sure what part of the world I wanted to explore.
mm,
It was really exciting because I was able to use what I was good at to be
mm.
involved in this world that I was fascinated by.
Yes.
But I always end up back in some kind of very consumer facing, whether it's creating environments, and working within architectural or experiential practices, which was, another arm that I didn't realize I had a sort of innate ability to do, and absolutely loved
Mm,
it, and was in wonderful studios with, again, tourists who really saw something. And again, that was another little block of confidence. Okay, there's some amazing person. They believe in me, and I'm doing this thing and working on these massive projects, and really, really exciting. And I don't think I ever pivoted out completely out of the world. Just different parts
mm,
of it. That bit by bit, experiential, digital, motion,
mm.
comms design, graphic design, typography design, book design, every touch point and consumer piece shaped the role I do today. That journey of saying yes to everything, and maybe when those roles came in, rather than going, I can't do that.
Mm.
Oh, I'd love to do that. I don't know if I'll be able to do it, but
So in a way, then every opportunity is a pivot for you because you go, oh yeah, I'll try that now, yeah,
yeah,
and I'll try that because all of it, as you say, is building that knowledge, that experience, isn't it?
exactly. And I think in a way it was like almost like I talk about doing like little fringe projects that are really important, that send that kind of message of that creativity is valued and failure is not
Mm,
feared. It's that kind of culture that encourages teams and talent to experiment without pressure of results. But I was naturally doing that exploration in roles for amazing brands
mm.
with amazing mentors. And I think saying yes, not pigeonholing yourself, because the world will do that for you, is really, really important. Just say yes. Can always, you can't, until you've experienced something, until you've done it, don't say no.
That's hard though, isn't it, Orla? Because there's one thing that the design industry has, which I see as a fault, is that if they're trying to hire a designer, they want a designer who is just this, that they have that experience. Whereas every designer that I've ever met has said kind of pretty much what you're saying is that just try it because if you're a good designer, you can design anything. But the design agencies and the design world don't really kind of match that thinking. They want you to have had, 10 years experience just doing that one area of design, or they don't, oh, you've never done that kind of design before. Well, we don't think you could possibly do it. And yet, really, all good designers can actually design anything. Because they learn, because every project is a learning on the hoof, really, isn't it?
I completely agree with you. And I would be very left of center on that as well, because I truly believe um, the piece of education that we go through as designers
Mm,
is just such a unique and an amazing approach to life. You know,
Mm,
no unsolvable problem, that there is multiple ways in. We're taught that from the get-go. Put it all down,
mm,
figure it out, look at it from different ways, upside down, inside out. And I really believe that, when you're looking at the same thing every day and the same person's looking at the same thing from the same perspective, to welcome in and invite in someone that is going to look at that with different eyes, from a different lens.
mm,
That's
mm.
what creativity is about.
I agree. Totally.
I love I love the way different people can shape a project, but also reset your mind, reset the way you think about that. And that for me is the constant nourishing of ourselves and nurturing and
Mm,
shing and revitalizing is seeing things through other people's eyes and seeing how they might solve a problem that you might never have seen before. I mean, that's again, that's the magic. And
yeah.
and I love hiring and seeing different people. And, I'll always say, we don't need to just see pack designers or, I want to see lots of different people. I
Mhm.
think encouraging and creating those opportunities for people is really, really important.
So you've talked a lot about mentors. Tell me about, because you touched on when we first started talking that your first tutor really saw something in you that you didn't necessarily initially see because you were very young. You hadn't quite got that confidence.
And when you're starting out and you've come from the countryside to Dublin and you've come from Dublin to London, New York or Berlin or wherever, you feel like an outsider and you feel like a total
Mm,
big fake. You just feel like you don't belong, all of those pieces. I think that's normal. It's natural.
mm, mm,
And I think that's part feeling unsure is how you navigate your creative instinct and you begin to refine. But it's really
mm,
important. External voices have to come into play. Obviously, ones that you trust and whose
mm,
perspective you trust, because they could be very damaging otherwise. So you need to ensure that they're voices that are going to give and offer guidance and clarity and encouragement that feels, ignites you.
mm,
The nudges in the right direction aren't solving problems for you, because then you're not learning anything. But
mm,
they give you the nudge, they validate you when you've done it right or the effort that's needed. I think it's that encouragement from those amazing people that
mm,
builds the trust in your own inner voice. And then you hone more and more into your own inner voice. And it's a natural phase from, your tutors in college to then your first roles, finding those mentors,
mm,
even exploring outside, ensuring that you have a mentor continually on your journey. That external eye, it just
mm,
helps sharpen your own natural inclination and help you understand how maybe you transform what those kind of raw instincts and ideas that you have into your skill, your commercial skill,
mm,
and then well honed creative process. And I think it's about that. That's part of the creative journey. I think we all go on is how you transform those external voices into your own
mm,
inner voice. I've been really blessed, from my parents to my tutors to Ken Garland, again, another hero, saw my book of typography at my MA show. And, he left a little note in my book and he said, to email and to give him a call. And then he became a mentor in that bridging time from leaving
yes.
college into the real world.
Mm,
What an amazing mentor to have. Incredible,
definitely.
incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, wow, wow. All the way through then at the different agencies I worked at, and I think also trusting your instinct in the kind of space that you want to work in. I think that's really
Mm.
important. Um,
Have you ever role modeled anyone, Orla? Like when you were young and you first went into some of these really well-known agencies where there was this, huge talent. What was your approach? Did you role model someone? Did you say, I want to be like that? Or was it more that you would just learn across the board and magpie some of those skills and approaches and make them your own?
I don't think I ever really role modeled, but I think I was always very open to, who was doing great presenting, who was doing, oh my
Mm,
God, their layout, their decks were just beautiful pieces of work in their own right, or the way they might come and stand by your desk and help and, look at your screen and chat about the work. And I think
Mm,
just being really inspired by everything, I really was big, wide-eyed kind of, and quite quiet, I think, and
mm,
a sponge, just utterly a sponge.
yeah.
But I think being in an environment that you felt felt comfortable with, and when you'd be,
Mm,
maybe sitting in the reception, about to go in, I always felt
mm,
immediately, okay, I like this vibe I'm feeling, and I think
mm.
it's a really important piece to be in a space and surround yourself.
Yes. See, yes, I think the design agencies fall into very two clear camps, and you can tell when you go into reception. And there are ones which are very high octane, and they're not safe for junior designers to offer an idea. They're very much run by egos, and those egos may be amazingly talented, but you can sense it. I've with in the early days, I worked with some agencies that were like that. And there was one, I won't say who, there was one agency where they had a lift where you went up in the lift and you stepped out and you were in the design studio straight away. So there was no little reception area. And I remember going up in the lift and walking out, and the atmosphere in the design studio was so awful, so tense, that I actually started to walk backwards to get back into the lift. I was like, I don't want to work with this client. But some you just walk in and it feels exciting. And some of those places I've thought I would love to be a designer. And if I was, I would want to work here. And you can just sense it. As soon as you walk in, there is just a vibe, and there's an energy through the place. But you can also sense there's a egalitarianism where a junior designer can offer an idea, and that there are amazing senior leaders, but that they are open to ideas. You can just sort of sense it very, very quickly. And they're the sort of people that I end up, as I've got experienced in this industry, they're the people I gravitate towards to have as my clients, because they allow the magic to happen.
I very much did lots of different places and spaces, and from, very bespoke design agencies to, much, the bigger, more strategic agencies, and felt a little uncomfortable in the beginning. But then, I think the some I went into and had that feeling of, oh my God, I love this place. I really hope they like me. And, I get the role when creativity is in the space and it's
Yeah.
buzzing energy, and it's an energy, it's tangible. And I think probably one or two that I didn't get the roles, but probably went knocking again. And that's the other thing, this, don't give up. Don't give up. It's not you. It was just not the right moment.
When you get rejected,
Yes.
it's how you develop the resilience to, as you say, to say to yourself, it just wasn't the right time, or this isn't the right opportunity. There's something else for me instead.
And it's not because
Yeah.
you're crap, which is where you immediately go to go back again. Sometimes the job disappears, which we know in the crazy of the way the pace of
Yeah.
that they forget to
Yeah.
tell you things. But they go, oh, that role it disappeared, but we have this other role and or this job. And that's just like, oh, it's so nice to get those moments. And I think to remember that when we're hiring people as well, I think kindness is really important.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, because we're in such a crazy time and the world at times seems so dark, I think kindness now has become absolutely crucial in all interactions, no matter what you're doing. But also, you said something earlier that I was just thinking, um, it would almost be an amazing world if you had creative people were the people who were actually running things, because of that problem solving. Would it talked a lot from the beginning about, you see that design is always really solving a problem and coming at it from as many different perspectives as possible in order to solve it and solve it well. If only we had creative people then running our societies would be so different, and they would look so different, and they would run better, wouldn't they? It just seems, it's almost like a no-brainer.
Yeah, there was a really interesting a piece I was invited to take part in at IADT, my old college, and it was part of Made in Europe. I joined a strategic shop around design thinking, and it was
Mm,
hosted by Joanna Fabin. I'm going to pronounce her name wrong, but she's CEO of 21st Europe. And
yeah.
there was a collective of both MA change students and in just
Mm,
across different industries. But
Mm,
together we explored ideas of the future as a direction,
mm,
not a destination. And it was all really big, serious subjects like nuclear energy
mm,
and defense and
mm,
AI. And it was all tackled through design thinking. And it
mm,
wasn't easy. Like the conversations were not comfortable, but that's where the point that design kicks in and design thrives because design
mm,
thrives in complexity.
mm.
And that kind of moment really resonated amongst everybody, and that kind of shared sense of we can get through this difficult problem, we can figure this complexity out, and that kind of
Mm,
that we have as designers, design being a tool for change. I think it's really powerful
definitely.
about design having a bigger, greater function and a way to shape
Yeah.
tell future stories, with empathy, as you say, kindness, but with empathy.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, design shapes outcomes for people, regardless of whether it's FMCG or how we engage with AI or how we discuss nuclear energy how it becomes a positive force. So, yes, a really interesting topic.
Everything that we interact with in life comes from a designer's mind at some point.
Yes.
And just you were saying, the conversations you had in this forum were often uncomfortable. I think that's one really strong point is that really good designers of any level are comfortable with conflict in that sense because again that's often where the idea becomes three-dimensional. It becomes the meat is put on the on an idea when there is a lot of conflict and a lot of disagreement. So again, like you coming back to your point about in the early stages of learning design, just learning how to be resilient, because it's that conflict and that disagreement and that constantly coming back and really coming back at it and arguing away until you get something that is amazing. That is also a really good approach for running societies because most people are really uncomfortable with conflict. And as soon as there is any kind of conflict, they walk away. And that's why there are no solutions in government, local government or government, because people who are not creatively minded see conflict as something that should be avoided at all costs. Whereas actually, it's in that moment of creative conflict that something really magical happens because, like you've talked about from the beginning, a solution comes to light. So maybe we should start a campaign, Orla, that only creative people are allowed to apply for government roles.
I mean, our role as designers is it can be applied to so many parts of life from,
Yeah.
social, cultural, government. And because we have that ability to respond to any kind of crazy brief. And you design with purpose and you design with clarity and you design with optimism. And I think, yes, let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's start that. So I'm going to ask you a slightly different version of a moment in motion. You've said because you were open-minded from the beginning, you never really had a set path. So you didn't experience those big pivot moments that some designers have experienced. So I wonder then, have you ever been in a position when you maybe then have faced a rejection, either rejection, not so much for a role, but really for an idea?
Oh my God.
And how have you managed to how have you pivoted around that? How do you overcome that? Because I think that's so interesting to hear. Someone with your experience. How do you get over that? Because that's really hard, isn't it? When you something you cared about and worked on then just is no.
I think you have to get very comfortable with that very early on because otherwise
Yeah,
you're in the wrong job.
totally. Yeah.
And you're setting yourself up for a very, very tough career path because you're going to face a lot of no's and a lot of opinions. And let's face it, everyone's a designer. And even more so now, everyone's a designer because they can put it into whatever AI platform they
Yeah. You see, I'm a really good designer now because I have Canva on my phone.
and but everybody's always been a designer. And I think you have to get very comfortable with a lot of cooks in the kitchen, especially if you want to work in communication design with like matrix stakeholders and be really open to lots of different opinions, but have the confidence to listen, but have your inner voice and understand how you shape ideas.
Is there something in particular where you can remember? You don't have to mention the client where you presented an idea that you really believed in and it just was knocked back. So what
So many.
What's the process then that you went through? And is there something in particular you can think of? So
Well,
do you walk away and put yourself back together again when that's happened?
there's always louder voices in the room, right? And sometimes you just have to let
Mhm.
those loud voices do what they need to do. This just person I am. Let them do what they need to do. And also because there could be something in that. I think like that's where I would always be. There could absolutely be something in that.
So you don't go to the defensive or think they're wrong. You're quite open to consider, well,
But
maybe I've missed something, or maybe there's something in there.
I would absolutely say in earlier in my career, of course you take it personally. You cannot separate the two, right? Because
Yes,
it's
because you're
come from
putting
you.
something personal. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you've put time and effort and thought. And I think that's part of creative maturity as well.
Yes.
Learning to separate the two, especially in a commercial environment. You've got to separate. And again, if you're in the right company, agency, surrounded by the right people, they help
Mm,
you. They allow you to grow because that's falling just in a different way, right? So
yes.
you have to be supported on that journey.
Yes,
It's about
definitely.
support and it's about, that moment that we talked about falling. It might not just be about landing the right idea. It might be about defending the wrong idea or being defensive. And that's okay.
How do you know? Is it just an instinct that you develop
Uh,
with experience?
yeah, you have to listen to when that moment, because there's other reasons, right? Especially in commercial businesses, right? There's so many other reasons why.
Yeah, there's often a financial. Yeah.
Financial, could be a commercialization reason, could be a franchise reason,
Mm,
be a consumer reason that you don't understand that completely different consumer insight. And so
mm,
you have to be very open to there's other reasons. And I think over time as well, maturity, confidence, there's always that perfect moment. And you feel so, supported by the people around you. And the more that you get that, the more confidently you will voice what those thoughts are. But I think, in the context of today's crazy world, where technology is challenging our creative thinking and what it means to be a designer at its very heart, I think, that ability to really tune into what resonates with you and allows you
mm,
to craft ideas that are not only, unique, but personal, like deeply personal to you, in terms of your values,
yes.
outlooks. That's what ensures that, you and your work as a designer is authentic and will stand out in a very noisy landscape. And that's a really important, and I guess it's intuition to know when those moments are, because you can't fight for
Mm,
everything, right? And sometimes it's not worth the squeeze.
no.
And you have to be, and that's me, right? Everyone's different. I think there's moments you fight for, and then there's other moments that there's reasons, as we said, external reasons, and it's not worth your personal passion. But when that passion kicks in,
No.
put it after something that's going to support your values.
It would be dependent on whether you know that client or not. If you don't know
Yeah.
that client, it's a much harder argument to
Yes.
stand up and push, isn't it? But if
It
you
really
know
is.
them, and like
Yeah.
you say, if you know about their consumers, if you have a greater understanding of their business, that makes it easier. But there are times when, like you say,
Yeah.
you're kind of going in a bit more blind and it just won't feel right to push.
Yeah. Exactly, and you have to learn that. You have to learn the business, and I think it's you have to be very open to and invite different perspectives. That's what's at the heart of innovation, right? And it's an essential quality if you want to be a designer in a commercial space and have a
Mm,
career that's going to have longevity and shape that meaningful thinking and how you contribute that's has an impact for the business because it's an ever evolving creative cultural landscape because it's shaped by the consumer who's always changing and shifting.
absolutely. Yes, yes, who are sometimes an unknowable quantity in the equation, aren't they?
It's your internal compass for creativity and your internal compass for the business that you get embedded in. It begins to hone in on when you should seize that opportunity and act with decisiveness. But I think the environment and the people around you are a big part of that.
Definitely. So looking back, Orla, on your career, what have you learnt the most? What have you learnt that you would always pass on to people coming into the industry? or people who are struggling in the industry? Because
Mm,
you've mentioned AI a lot. The design industry is probably under more pressure than it's ever been under before. Not just with AI, but of course, financial constraints, global financial constraints. So, what, from your experience, what do you think is the best advice? What lessons are there?
There's always lots of lessons. I think you have to be very willing to learn the lessons. That's where your growth happens. That's where your resilience happens. Don't take things personally. I think it's a really easier said than done, and it takes time. But don't take things personally. There's always so many other things at
Mm,
play. But external voices, mentors, really important, because in those moments where you are struggling, or there's conflict, or there's a lack of confidence, or there's just you're not in the right space and you're not in the right environment, uh,
mm,
someone to tell you, move environment and you'll be in the right space. And someone that
yes.
speaks to you, sees you, sees your creative soul, inspires you, challenges you, like not just a safe space that's going to tell you all is fine in the world,
Mm,
but someone who will genuinely challenge you in all
mm,
the right ways and spark that imagination of of you in that present moment, but of your future self and your future career. I think that's what's really important, because it's hard to continually take those knocks if you're experiencing them, or be in a negative environment. That's very depleting. So you need to find that
definitely.
person, throw your arms around them, because they are really important to pull you through. And ultimately, you've got to build resilience in yourself, because we won't always have those people. And you got to rely on yourself on
Yes.
the first, and you've got to pull yourself through and know when to make those hard calls and move. It's not always easy.
Yeah, definitely.
There's always, I think in my experience, there's always been, and that's why having a different arm and being open to
Mm,
exploring something else is really
mm.
important, because it opens up a whole new door and a whole new experience. And that's what's exciting about the creative industry. You can apply that core approach to how we solve problems through design thinking and critical thinking to many different businesses, agencies.
I agree. I agree totally.
You
There's
don't
so many
pigeonhole
different
yourself.
ways if you've got the skills. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't
Yeah,
pigeon.
definitely. So if you were given the chance, Orla, to go back in time, is there anything that you would change, or would you leave it as it played out because you would feel, the way that it's played out is how it's meant to have done?
I am a great believer in the universe. And yes, I think what is for you, you will find, and it will come. And everything, like the waves, they shape you. I think if I could go back, I would just tell myself to have more confidence. I think that's the piece. But I do that now by being a mentor, and hopefully imbue that in
Yes.
students going out into the world, or people starting in their careers, and just have confidence. Designers are incredible people with incredible perspective on the world, and just have confidence in what
Mm.
they bring to a team and to a project. And I'd love to be, I've had lots of people telling me that on my journey, thankfully, but I would have loved to have fully believed it and I think I would have go back and say, it's okay, believe it, you've got it.
Yes, definitely. It would make, in so many situations, having that inner belief would
Oh,
make such a difference, wouldn't it? But like you said, you've said all along that sometimes the struggle is where you learn, and
absolutely.
sometimes having to move forward when you haven't got that inner belief, you perhaps gain something else as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love that. I would like that young people, when they are studying, it's a core aspect of all they're studying, is to have inner belief, to have self-trust, to have that they trust their own voice and their own intuition. And as you've said often through the conversation, that to get it wrong isn't a failure. It's a learning. It's the biggest learning curve that you get in any career, is by getting it wrong first time. And then you have to go away and you have to come back at a different way. It sharpens up your thinking. It makes you stronger. It helps you to understand strategy when you have to sort of go away and pull it all apart again and come back to it.
Yeah, and I think, I certainly did think that some people were just born with this confidence and they just had it. And some people naturally are and they thrive being, up with the spotlight. But
Yeah.
I think it's a muscle, like going to the gym. It's just a
Yeah,
muscle.
I do as
You
well.
can sharpen and hone that muscle, and you cultivate and you build that mindset that, it's possible, and you've got to
Mm.
embrace those opportunities you get to build that muscle. Thinking about it for me, thinking about it in the umbrella of nature and being second nature, then naming it in that way removed maybe some of the bigger associations people can have around confidence and maybe slash ego.
Mm.
Didn't feel comfortable for me. And it's
Yes, and I encounter that all the time. People often think that confidence or is overconfidence or confidence is ego. And I don't even really like using the word anymore as a result. So I always fall back on self-trust,
yes,
because self-trust doesn't carry the ego. It's a much more soft concept for people to embrace, because
yeah,
nobody wants to be that person that talks down to people or cancels out their ideas. And that's what they sometimes think of when they hear the word confidence.
yes. That's why I love. I think how I think of is that becomes your second nature because it feels much more
Yes.
attainable as a concept for
Yes.
it means it's all achievable because it's already part of us and it's
Yes.
there and it's how you shape confidence in the way that is comfortable for you. And there's all different kinds
Yes.
of confidence, It doesn't mean bold,
Yes.
exuberant. It can be quiet and elegant and this is what feels right for you. And I think it's removing those words of association that can make confidence feel unattainable or uncomfortable. Learn it and develop it over time and practice patience and persistence. It's going to get better.
Definitely. Definitely. Okay. Well, Ola, where can people reach out to you? What's
Um,
the best
lo-
way?
LinkedIn.
Yep, I'll put a link on the release. And what are you up to next? Where are you off to next?
So this time of year is very exciting because we're in the run up to the UEFA finals. So it's a really exciting time. Two of my projects that
Yeah.
I'm part of, a huge team, are up for their finalists in awards. That will take me to New York, which is always a
Congrats.
joy. My original
Brilliant. Yeah, very
wonderful,
nice. Yes.
inspiring city. And then the two UEFA finals, the women's is in Oslo, where I've never been. So I'm very excited to visit Oslo. And the men's is in Budapest.
Yes.
So just incredible places to get to visit.
Wow.
And
Yes.
yeah, very excited for the next couple of weeks.
That sounds amazing. That sounds wonderful. New York,
I
Budapest,
know.
Oslo. Wow.
I know.
Back to lovely Dublin.
I'm back to home, yes. And then when you go back to
Yeah.
thinking about, your 16 or your 70-year-old self going, who loved traveling and wanted to go everywhere. It's just
Yes.
incredible to do it as part of a career that you love. And I love my brand and I love my colleagues. I'm just blessed with some incredibly talented and lovely people. And it makes the work just a joy, that piece around following that little voice inside you,
Mm,
it's really important to do something that you can love. I feel very, very lucky to have had parents to encourage me on that path and, um, as I
definitely.
say, work with some really incredible people. Rachel, thank you so
Well, that
much.
was a lovely conversation. And considering how crazy busy you are, Ola, I am so grateful for you giving me the time.
Thank you for
Thank you so
inviting
much.